I'm hauling my horse trailer down the gravel road to my family's ranch after 4 months in Washington, D.C., when red and blue lights slice through the Texas sunset, 3 squad cars blocking my gate. And there she stands, Karen Whitmore, arms crossed, that victorious smirk plastered across her face like she'd just won the lottery. She's actually bouncing on her toes behind the officers. The deputy approaches my truck hat in hand, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Sir, we got a trespassing complaint. This lady says you don't belong here." I glance at Karen, then at the iron sign reading White Hawk Ranch, Est, 1887. Then back at this woman who moved into the new subdivision 3 months ago. Diesel exhaust mingles with sagebrush. Cattle are lowing somewhere in my back pasture. "Officer," I say calmly, "meet the woman who just called the cops on the guy who oversees every HOA in America." Karen's victory smile melts like ice cream in August. "What would you do if some HOA busybody tried to get you arrested on your own family land? Drop your worst HOA nightmare below and tell me where you're watching from. Let me back up and tell you how we got here. My name is Garrett Whitehawk, and 4 months ago I buried my father on this same Texas soil his grandfather broke with a plow in 1887. 2,400 acres of rolling hills, mesquite, and the finest cattle operation in Millfield County. Dad left me more than land, though. See, while I was running cattle and fixing fence, I'd been working my way up through Federal Housing Administration. When the old man passed, I got called to Washington, D.C. for a promotion regional oversight director for the Federal Housing Authority. My job making sure HOAs across 5 states follow the law. The irony was about to become delicious. While I was learning how to investigate crooked HOA boards and development scams, my foreman, Buck Henley, was dealing with our new neighbors, Sagebrush Estates, a fancy subdivision marketed as authentic Western living experience. Translation: California transplants, paying premium prices to live next to real cowboys, then complaining about everything that makes it authentic. Enter Karen Whitmore, 48 years old, fresh from some HOA civil war in San Diego, who appointed herself neighborhood compliance coordinator before her U-Haul was unloaded. Buck described her perfectly. She's got the energy of a caffeinated chihuahua, twice the bite, and about half the sense. Karen's first week, she drove by our ranch twice daily with a measuring tape, clipboard, and the determination of a health inspector at a roach motel. Buck caught her photographing our cattle through fence slats, actually taking notes on their bathroom habits like she was writing a dissertation on bovine waste management. The complaint started immediately. Certified letters piling up faster than manure in a feedlot. Excessive agricultural odors. Apparently cow manure doesn't smell like roses. Unsightly equipment storage because tractors are so offensive. Noise. Violations from livestock operations. Cows moo? Who knew? All filed with Millfield County by concerned citizens, which translated to Karen plus whichever neighbors she'd terrorized into submission. Buck kept me updated through scratchy phone calls. To D.C. "Boss, this woman's documenting everything. Time stamps our feeding schedule, measures dust clouds with some fancy meter, even called the county claiming our access road violates her property setbacks. Here's the beautiful part. Her house sits 50 feet from our fence. Our cattle road's been there since Sam Houston was in diapers, but suddenly it's a traffic hazard incompatible with her residential character. I came home to 17 complaint letters and 1 memorable introduction at Kowalski's feed store. The smell of grain dust and leather oil hit me like a warm hug home. Then Karen cornered me by the horse supplements, extending a manicured hand like, "We were meeting at some ritzy charity auction. You must be Mr. Whitehawk. I'm Karen Whitmore, community standards advocate for Sagebrush Estates." Her smile was all porcelain veneers and zero warmth. "We simply must discuss modernizing your operations to fit our neighborhood aesthetic." Behind her, old Marty Kowalski pretended to organize salt licks while clearly enjoying the show. The crunch of my boots on scattered feed echoed in the sudden silence. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my voice calm as Sunday morning, This ranch has been here since before your neighborhood was a fever dream in some developer's head. Oh, I completely understand the historical significance. She trilled like she was explaining multiplication to a kindergartner. But times change. Property values, you know. I have extensive experience with municipal compliance and valuable connections in county planning. I'm confident we can find solutions that work for everyone. The way she said solutions made it clear she meant surrender. 20 minutes, she talked about community harmony and appropriate land use while I bought cattle mineral and listened to her. Redesign my family's century-old operation. Never once asked about our history, our legal rights, or whether we gave a damn about her dinner party schedule. Just assumed we'd roll over because Queen Karen had spoken. That night, I sat on the porch where 4 generations of Whitehawks had watched storms roll across these hills. Lightning flickered on the horizon, and I could taste rain in the air, metallic and electric. The county had scheduled a neighborhood compatibility hearing based on Karen's complaints. She wanted our cattle road moved, our equipment screened from residential view, and our feeding schedule changed to accommodate her social calendar. I sipped bourbon and smiled. Storm coming. All right. Karen Whitmore just didn't know she'd picked a fight with the one guy in America who could shut down her entire HOA with a phone call. Karen didn't waste time. Within a week, she'd transformed. From solo complainer into general of a 3-person army. Meet the Sagebrush Estates Property Values Committee. Sounds official, right? Her lieutenants, Bryce Kellerman, a retired bank manager who counted pennies like they were endangered species, and Donna Hutchins, former Phoenix City Council member, who'd moved to Texas to escape the very bureaucracy she'd helped create. They held their first emergency meeting at Karen's kitchen table, complete with matching folders and a PowerPoint presentation titled Agricultural Operations Impact Assessment. I'm not kidding. Buck security cameras caught Bryce arriving with a laser pointer and portable screen like they were planning the D-Day invasion instead of harassing a cattle ranch. Then came the beautiful irony. Karen decided to research me online and found my federal position as Regional Oversight Director. But here's what made me chuckle into my morning coffee. She completely misunderstood what I do. In her mind, I was some corrupt government lackey who oversees ranch inspections and protects agricultural interests. Perfect, she announced to her committee, voice carrying across the evening air to Buck's listening post. He's obviously biased toward ranchers. We'll go straight to Washington over his head. I have connections in municipal planning. If she only knew those connections were about to become very interested in her HOA's compliance issues. While Karen plotted my professional destruction, I was quietly building her legal grave. Sarah Olivia, my attorney, ran a title search that revealed something delicious. I remembered my grandfather explaining these protections when I was 12, watching him argue with some long-forgotten developer. Agricultural easements are permanent legal shields that protect existing farm operations from future residential complaints. Every noise complaint Karen filed was actually strengthening our case by documenting our historical activities. The principle is simple. You can't move next to a farm, then complain about farming. The real treasure. Karen's previous addresses revealed a pattern clearer than cattle tracks in mud. 3 states, 4 communities, identical neighbor disputes. I called her former neighbor in San Diego. Oh, God, you got Karen? Mrs. Rodriguez laughed until she snorted. She tried to get our mariachi band arrested for cultural noise violations, called immigration on our gardener, filed 17 complaints about our dogs barking. We have a cat. Karen's campaign escalated beautifully. She hired an Austin law firm specializing in nuisance abatement, fancy words for legal bullying. The smell of expensive trouble wafted through their demand letter like overpriced cologne. They threatened lawsuits for diminished property values and demanded immediate cessation of incompatible agricultural activities. Her documentation project reached obsessive levels. Karen measured noise with a decibel meter during our 6 a.m. feeding routine, the electronic beeping echoing across the pasture like some demented alarm clock. She photographed every cow pie within 50 yards of her fence. Buck caught her standing on a ladder, taking aerial photos of our equipment yard like she was conducting military reconnaissance. The community rallied faster than horses to grain. Marty Kowalski banned Karen from his feed store after she demanded to inspect our delivery trucks. Rita Sandoval, who runs the county's best diner, told Karen her dress code suggestion for customers could be filed under places the sun don't shine. "That woman," Rita said, sliding coffee across the scarred Formica counter, complained about my chicken and dumplings being too ethnically aromatic. In Texas, the audacity could choke a horse. The sound of Rita's coffee pot hitting the burner punctuated her disgust, like a judge's gavel. Karen's legal team escalated with their first official demand: cease cattle operations within 200 yards of residential property, relocate equipment storage, establish sound barriers for livestock areas. Cost estimate, $340,000 in ranch modifications, to accommodate neighbors who'd moved next to an existing operation. She organized a Facebook campaign called Millfield County Rural Reform, posting professionally photographed evidence of our violations. Half her photos showed normal ranch activities that had been legal since before Texas statehood. The other half documented our cattle doing revolutionary things like eating grass and existing while being cows. The entertainment peaked when Karen measured our fence height with a surveyor's rod, documenting potential sightline violations. Bessie, our most social heifer, wandered over to investigate this strange human behavior. Karen shrieked like she'd encountered a grizzly and ran for her SUV, abandoning expensive equipment in her panic. "Boss," Buck called, chuckling, "I got video of our neighbor being chased by a 1,000-pound cow who just wanted to say howdy. This beats cable TV. The county scheduled our neighborhood compatibility hearing for next month." Karen was confident. Her charts, graphs, and multimedia presentation would prove our ranch was an anachronistic nuisance, incompatible with modern residential development. What she didn't know, I'd already spoken with Marcus Webb, the county planning director, and Dad's old fishing buddy. Marcus reviewed our agricultural easement and laughed until coffee came out his nose. "Garrett, this woman's complaints are legally meaningless. Your protections predate her subdivision by a century. But let her have her hearing might be educational for everyone involved." Karen thought she was building a case against us. Actually, she was documenting exactly why agricultural protections exist and why HOAs can't override century-old property rights. Karen's war machine kicked into overdrive. She launched Millfield County Rural Reform with a professional website featuring dramatic photos of our ranch operations cattle grazing, apparently qualified as visual pollution in her world. She contacted Channel 7 about outdated agricultural exemptions hurting innocent homeowners and organized a petition drive demanding ranch modernization requirements. The woman was thorough. I'll give her that. She discovered our property tax records and filed a complaint claiming the ranch was underassessed compared to residential properties. The smell of bureaucratic meddling hung in the air like diesel exhaust on a still morning. But here's where Karen's amateur detective work backfired spectacularly. She found out I owned mineral rights under a portion of her precious subdivision. Information. That's public record if you know where to look. Most people don't understand that in Texas, mineral rights often stay with original landowners, even when surface land gets developed. Karen assumed this gave her ammunition against me, threatening to expose conflicts of interest to my federal supervisors. She had no clue that owning mineral rights actually strengthened my legal position, while her complaints were building a beautiful case for harassment. Watching someone dig their own grave with such enthusiasm was almost painful. I responded with the patience my grandfather taught me when dealing with spooked cattle: calm, steady, and strategic. Sarah Olivia began documenting Karen's harassment pattern for a potential restraining order. I continued my federal HOA oversight training through online modules, learning fascinating details about communities that failed to meet development obligations. The ranch community rallied like neighbors should. The Ranchers Association offered legal fund assistance, though we didn't need it yet. Millfield High School's FFA chapter wrote a letter supporting our operations. Those kids understand. Agriculture better than most adults. The Chamber of Commerce passed a resolution backing agricultural heritage, and 3 subdivision residents privately apologized, distancing themselves from Karen's crusade. Karen's next move revealed just how disconnected she was from Texas law. She attempted to get our ranch declared a public nuisance through city council petition, apparently unaware that Millfield's city limits ended 2 miles from our property. The public meeting where she presented her case to a confused council became local legend. "Ma'am," the mayor explained gently, "we have no jurisdiction over county land. You might want to research municipal boundaries before filing petitions." The room's collective wince was audible, but Karen doubled down, claiming I was intimidating residents through threatening behavior, her evidence being security footage of cattle grazing peacefully in our pasture. Meanwhile, Sarah Olivia's investigation uncovered something delicious. The subdivision developer had cut corners on environmental impact studies, and original permits required a 200-foot agricultural buffer that was never implemented. Karen's house sat 50 feet from our property line, violating original development conditions. Even better, the county inspector found multiple HOA violations throughout Sagebrush Estates. Unpermitted fences, drainage issues, and buildings that exceeded height restrictions. Turns out Karen's community had bigger legal problems than cow. Manure smells. The irony kept building. During one of my federal training sessions about municipal compliance, I learned that HOAs managing developments built with any federal funding or tax incentives fall under oversight jurisdiction. A quick records check revealed Sagebrush Estates had received exactly those benefits during construction. Karen had been harassing the one person in America with authority to investigate her community's regulatory failures. Sarah's investigation revealed something even more damaging. Karen's house specifically violated setback requirements from the original permits. She'd built 50 feet from our property line when regulations required 200 feet. Her dream home was technically an illegal structure. "This gets better," Sarah continued, sliding another document across the table. "The subdivision's stormwater management system relies on natural drainage through your ranch property. The original permits acknowledge this dependency. Restricting your operations could cause flooding throughout their community during heavy rains. Karen's vulnerability was complete. Property values she claimed to protect would crater if county enforcement action required compliance work. The special assessment to fund necessary improvements would be approximately $12,000 per household, money her community couldn't afford, and she definitely couldn't pay. I remembered my grandfather's advice about dealing with aggressive neighbors. Sometimes the best defense is letting folks tie their own noose. Karen had spent months creating documentation that proved our ranch was beneficial to the area, while her subdivision was the real problem. The trap had been set by her own hand. She just didn't realize she was standing in it. Karen thought she was David fighting Goliath. Actually, she was Goliath falling on her own sword while David watched from a safe distance. The taste of justice was sweeter than Rita's peach cobbler and twice as satisfying. Karen's harassment campaign had triggered investigations that would either bankrupt her community or force them to spend hundreds of thousands fixing problems they'd ignored for years. All I had to do was continue normal ranch operations, while Karen's house of cards collapsed under the weight of her own complaints. Time to assemble the cavalry. Sarah Olivia spread legal documents across her conference table like a general planning a military campaign. Buck Henley arrived with 40 years of ranch operation records, proving our historical precedents down to the day we first drove cattle down that disputed road. Rita Sandoval offered her diner as neutral meeting ground and promised the best coffee in 3 counties to fuel our strategy sessions. Marcus Webb from County Planning brought the bureaucratic firepower, explaining how permit enforcement worked and agreeing to accelerate the subdivision's compliance review. Channel 7's Jake Morrison wanted exclusive access to our story as it unfolded. The man smelled a regional Emmy in the making. Our 3-pronged strategy emerged over Rita's legendary chicken fried steak and strong black coffee that could wake the dead. The legal track was Sarah's domain. We'd file a counter-complaint against the subdivision for permit violations, request county enforcement of original development conditions, and prepare documentation for my potential restraining order against Karen. As backup, I'd ready a federal HOA compliance investigation, the nuclear option that could shut down their entire community governance. Sarah's research had revealed something fascinating about agricultural easements that I'd learned from my grandfather but never fully appreciated. These protections aren't just suggestions, they're permanent legal shields that run with the land. Forever. When developers build near existing farms, they're acknowledging that agricultural activities take precedence. You can't buy property next to a working ranch, then demand it stop working. The community track required more finesse. I coordinated with the Ranchers Association to show unified support at the upcoming county meeting. We arranged testimonials from longtime residents about our ranch's community value. People who remembered my father helping during the '98 flood and my grandfather donating land for the volunteer fire station. Local businesses were already rallying. Marty Kowalski documented how Karen's complaints affected his feed store customers. Dr. Sarah Martinez, our veterinarian, prepared statements about our exemplary animal care standards. Even the postmaster offered to testify about our road safety record. No mail delivery incidents in 37 years. We planned Heritage Day at the ranch, showcasing our historical significance to the community. The smell of barbecue smoke and the sound of fiddle music would demonstrate what authentic Western heritage actually meant, not Karen's sanitized suburban fantasy. The federal track was my specialty. During my Washington training, I'd learned that developments receiving any federal funding or tax incentives like sagebrush estates, which automatically qualify for HOA oversight review. Sagebrush estates had received exactly those benefits, making them subject to federal accountability standards they'd been ignoring for years. I gathered data on HOA compliance failures for my congressional subcommittee presentation, using our local situation as a case study in development oversight problems. The timing was perfect. Legislators were drafting stronger HOA accountability measures, and real-world examples carried more weight than theoretical proposals. My federal colleagues were fascinated by the agricultural angle. Many rural communities faced similar pressures from suburban expansion, and our case could establish precedents protecting agricultural operations nationwide. The economic analysis was compelling. Our ranch provided $180,000 annually in local economic activity through feed, veterinary, and equipment purchases. Buck security footage became crucial evidence. We had documented proof of Karen's daily harassment, measuring fence lines at dawn, photographing cattle through slats, following our supply trucks, and conducting what could only be described as agricultural surveillance. The woman had turned neighbor complaints into a full-time obsession. Environmental impact assessments revealed the beautiful irony. Our ranch operations actually improved local air quality and soil stability compared to intensive residential development. The subdivision's stormwater system depended on natural drainage through our property, a dependency acknowledged in original development permits. Removing or restricting our operations could cause flooding throughout the subdivision during heavy rains. During one strategy session at Rita's, the pieces clicked together like a well-oiled machine. Every aggressive move Karen made created more documentation of harassment. Her complaints to multiple agencies had accelerated regulatory review processes. Community support was solidifying as her tactics became increasingly extreme. The perfect storm was brewing. County planning would address subdivision permit compliance. At month's end, federal HOA oversight had announced compliance review tours in our region. The local newspaper planned a feature story on agricultural heritage for the county's 150th anniversary. Jake Morrison's investigative piece was scheduled for Sweeps Week, guaranteeing maximum viewership. Sarah organized our legal documents with military precision. Buck prepared historical ranch operation demonstrations for the Heritage event. Rita coordinated community support logistics. Marcus scheduled the crucial county meeting. Jake Morrison confirmed his camera crew's availability. I received the call that made everything perfect. The congressional subcommittee requesting my testimony about HOA oversight failures with specific interest in using local case studies. Karen's harassment campaign had inadvertently provided me with a national platform to address systemic problems affecting rural communities across America. The taste of impending victory was sweeter than Rita's famous peach cobbler. Karen thought she was fighting a local rancher. She was actually battling federal housing policy, state agricultural protections, county planning authority, and community solidarity. All we had to do was let her keep digging while we prepared to fill in the hole. Karen's desperation reached new levels of creative destruction. She placed anonymous calls to the state veterinarian claiming livestock abuse, apparently believing that well-fed cattle in clean pastures constituted animal cruelty. She contacted the IRS suggesting our ranch operations were hobby farming tax fraud, a laughable claim considering our consistent profitability and proper documentation spanning 3 generations. The woman's paranoia drove her to offer cash payments to our seasonal workers, trying to recruit them as informants. Buck caught wind of this through his nephew Miguel, who worked summer hay crews, and reported Karen approaching him with $50 and questions about our illegal activities. She wanted to know if we dumped chemicals in the creek or mistreated animals, Miguel told Buck, shaking his head. I told her the only thing we dump is love on those cattle, and she looked at me like I was speaking Chinese. Her complaints grew increasingly bizarre. Karen filed reports with the Postal Service about unsafe ranch road conditions affecting mail delivery, the same road our mail carrier had used safely for 37 years. She measured dust particles with handheld devices documenting air quality violations that were actually just Texas wind blowing Texas dirt. The mini-twist came when Karen's husband cracked under financial pressure. Dave Whitmore had been hiding their true situation from his wife, but the mounting legal costs and her escalating obsession forced a confession that Buck's security cameras captured through their open kitchen window. "Karen, we're broke." Dave's voice carried across the evening air. "We owe $89,000 in California back taxes, liens, and legal settlements. We moved here to avoid wage garnishment. We can't afford to lose house value or pay HOA assessments. You have to stop this madness." But Karen was too deep in her crusade to quit. Like a gambler doubling down on bad bets, she'd invested too much pride to walk away now. My federal investigation accelerated with discoveries that made Karen's complaints look like child's play. The HOA compliance review revealed $127,000 in unaccounted administrative expenses over 3 years. The previous board president before Karen's involvement appeared to have embezzled funds meant for infrastructure maintenance. This financial mismanagement meant the HOA lacked resources to address permit violations even if they wanted to comply. They were functionally bankrupt while facing hundreds of thousands in required compliance costs. Karen's media blitz continued backfiring spectacularly. She appeared on KTXS Talk Radio, contradicting her previous statements about our ranch timeline. When she claimed we'd moved in after the subdivision, host Jim Bradley fact-checked her live using the county property database. "Ma'am," Bradley said, the sound of rustling papers audible over the airwaves. "These records show the White Hawk Ranch was established in 1887. Your subdivision was approved in 2023. That's a difference of about 136 years. Callers overwhelmingly supported our ranch, sharing their own HOA horror stories. The taste of public vindication was sweeter than morning coffee on a cold day. Community pressure mounted like storm clouds before a tornado. Subdivision residents received county notices about permit violations and potential special assessments. Their insurance company threatened coverage cancellation due to development noncompliance. 3 families put houses on the market rather than face financial ruin. The HOA board called an emergency meeting to discuss removing Karen from leadership positions. Even her most loyal supporters were abandoning ship as the legal and financial consequences became clear. Karen's harassment escalated to truly dangerous levels. She blocked our supply truck at the subdivision entrance, demanding to inspect cargo like some self-appointed customs agent. She took photographs through ranch windows with telephoto lenses, documenting our family activities like a private investigator. Most disturbing, she followed me to town meetings, the feed store, and Rita's diner, maintaining visual contact like a stalker building a case. Marty Kowalski finally banned her from his property after she accused him of participating in agricultural conspiracy theories. The woman created fake social media accounts to spread rumors about our ranch operations, posting elaborate theories about federal corruption and environmental violations. The posts were so unhinged that most people assumed they were parody accounts making fun of HOA extremists. Legal intervention became inevitable. Sarah Olivia filed a restraining order petition with extensive documentation of Karen's escalating harassment pattern. The sheriff's office recommended criminal stalking charges based on her behavior escalating from complaints to surveillance to direct confrontation. The county attorney reviewed our case for possible criminal harassment prosecution. Judge Williams granted a temporary protective order requiring Karen to stay 500 yards from our ranch property, essentially barring her from half the county roads she'd been using for surveillance. Media attention peaked when Channel 7 aired Jake Morrison's full investigative piece, When HOAs Go Wrong, A Texas Tale. The story focused on development permit failures, financial mismanagement, and legal obligations that could bankrupt individual homeowners through special assessments. Morrison interviewed longtime residents who praised our ranch's community contributions. Contrasted with Karen's documented harassment campaign, the piece exposed not just local drama, but systemic problems with HOA accountability nationwide. Federal spotlight intensified when the congressional subcommittee scheduled hearings on HOA oversight reform. My testimony would feature Sagebrush Estates as a case study in regulatory failure, and national media picked up the story as an example of suburban-rural conflict gone wrong. Federal housing officials announced stricter HOA compliance requirements partly based on our situation. Karen's local harassment had inadvertently triggered national policy discussions about development accountability. Her support system collapsed completely. Dave threatened divorce if the harassment continued. Their adult children refused to visit. Due to embarrassing behavior, and remaining neighbors avoided contact or considered their own legal action against her. The HOA attorney advised the board to distance themselves from Karen's actions to avoid liability. Her isolation was total, financially ruined, legally threatened, and socially ostracized by the very community she claimed to protect. Ranch operations continued normally, despite the ongoing circus. We hosted successful school field trips showcasing sustainable farming, received the county fair's agricultural heritage recognition, and maintained our economic contributions to the local community. Technical studies confirmed everything we'd known for generations. Environmental impact assessments showed our operations benefited the local ecosystem. Water management analysis proved the subdivision depended on our drainage patterns. Economic reports quantified our $230,000 annual contribution to county commerce. Karen's final confrontation attempt violated the restraining order spectacularly. She approached me at the courthouse steps, claiming I'd ruined her life through government conspiracy while courthouse security cameras captured every word. "You destroyed my family," she screamed, pointing an accusing finger while deputies moved to intervene. "You used your federal position to persecute innocent homeowners." The irony was perfect. Karen being arrested for violating a restraining order, while accusing me of abusing power. Her mugshot appeared in the county newspaper next to an article about our ranch receiving heritage preservation recognition. Additional charges were filed for restraining order violation and criminal stalking. The woman who'd tried to have me arrested for trespassing on my own land was now facing jail time for harassing a federal employee. Justice tasted sweeter than Rita's apple pie and twice as satisfying. The House Subcommittee on Housing and Community Development convened in Austin on a Tuesday that would change everything. C-SPAN cameras rolled as I took the witness stand, transforming our local conflict into a national conversation about HOA accountability and agricultural protection. Mr. Whitehawk, Congressman Martinez began, please explain how the Sagebrush Estates case illustrates systemic failures in HOA oversight. The irony was delicious. Karen had inadvertently provided me with the perfect platform to address problems affecting rural communities nationwide. As I testified about development permit failures and agricultural harassment, millions of viewers learned how HOAs could destroy both property values and community harmony through regulatory negligence. Karen attempted to attend the hearing, but was removed by Capitol Security for disrupting proceedings with shouted accusations about government corruption. Her ejection was broadcast live, cementing her reputation as an unhinged extremist rather than a concerned citizen. The restraining order hearing scheduled the same week became a masterclass in legal consequence. Karen represented herself never a wise choice, making rambling accusations about federal conspiracies. While Judge Williams reviewed chronological evidence of her harassment campaign, Sarah Olivia presented security footage, police reports, and witness statements with clinical precision. The judge watched videos of Karen measuring our fence lines, at dawn, photographing cattle through slats and following my truck through town with obvious surveillance intent. Mrs. Whitmore, Judge Williams said, his voice carrying the weight of 30 years on the bench. This court finds your behavior constitutes systematic harassment of law-abiding agricultural operations. The evidence demonstrates a clear pattern of escalating misconduct that threatens public safety. The permanent restraining order expanded the protective perimeter to 1,000 yards. Criminal stalking charges were referred to the district attorney. Court costs and legal fees were awarded to our ranch money Karen couldn't afford to pay. Outside the courthouse, media circus reached peak intensity. National news trucks lined the square while Karen gave an impromptu press conference that destroyed any remaining credibility. She contradicted earlier statements, claimed I controlled the government, and accused our ranch of destroying her family. The video went viral within hours. HOA Karen trended nationally with 2.3 million views in the first day, becoming a cautionary tale about suburban entitlement and rural harassment. Late-night comedians made jokes about measuring cow manure and calling police on century-old ranches. My congressional testimony generated immediate policy impact. The subcommittee adopted my recommendations for federal HOA oversight reform, including stronger protections for agricultural operations adjacent to residential developments. New requirements for development permit compliance monitoring would prevent future Karen situations. A $50 million federal grant program for agricultural heritage preservation was announced, directly inspired by our case. The program would help family farms resist development pressure while maintaining community character. County commissioners formally recognized our ranch as an agricultural heritage site, adding state historical protection that Karen could never challenge. The local tourism board created working ranch tours featuring our operation, generating additional revenue while educating visitors about authentic agricultural heritage. Property values in our area increased due to the heritage designation, the opposite of Karen's dire predictions. Neighboring landowners thanked us for protecting rural character against suburban encroachment. Sagebrush Estates faced harsh consequences. The HOA completed required permit compliance at a cost of $380,000, forcing special assessments that bankrupted 3 families and caused 6 more to sell homes at significant losses. Property values plummeted as word spread about regulatory failures and financial mismanagement. The new HOA board implemented strict anti-harassment policies. Recognizing that Karen's behavior had created legal liability for the entire community, they publicly apologized to our ranch and established cooperative agreements for mutual benefit. Karen's personal downfall was complete. Her house entered foreclosure due to legal costs and California back taxes. Dave filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and seeking restraining orders of his own. Their adult children refused further contact, embarrassed by her public behavior and legal troubles. She moved out of state with no forwarding address, leaving behind a trail of legal judgments and unpaid debts. The criminal stalking case proceeded to trial, where she eventually pleaded guilty to avoid jail time. Federal policy changes emerged directly from our situation. New regulations required HOA disclosure of all permit compliance obligations to potential buyers. Agricultural protection laws were strengthened in federal housing programs. Frivolous complaint penalties increased dramatically for harassment cases. Regional oversight directors gained authority to investigate HOA abuse patterns, preventing future agricultural harassment campaigns. Our case became the template for rural-suburban conflict resolution, studied in law schools and planning departments as an example of how community solidarity defeats individual harassment. The model prevents agricultural harassment while protecting property rights for everyone involved. As sunset paints the sky orange and purple, I watch our children play in the ranch yard while Sarah tends her vegetable garden. Tour buses arrive for evening educational programs. County sheriff waves a friendly greeting, and cattle graze peacefully in pastures that have fed families for over a century. Sometimes the best way to handle a bully is letting them defeat themselves. Property rights research before buying saves everyone headaches later. Community healing happens when good people stand up for what's right. Share your HOA nightmare in the comments. Let's support each other. Subscribe for more David versus Goliath justice stories, and ring that bell if you believe in protecting agricultural heritage. Next week, how I used eminent domain laws to stop a casino from destroying my town's main street. That's all for today's HOA madness. If watching justice serve itself made your day, smash that like button, share your thoughts down below, and make sure you're subscribed. More outrageous neighborhood showdowns are just around the corner.